I believe Toby could do anything. I just wouldn't want her to suffer like that. Welcome to Baggage Claim, an unofficial Jet Lag the Game companion podcast. Today, we're unpacking episode 1 of season 15, Tag All-Stars. I'm Casey.
I'm Kira.
And I'm Jaya.
Kira, how good are you at charades?
I would say I'm pretty bad at charades, if I'm being totally honest.
Jaya, what about you? And do you think you can mime out the jet lag players in 60 seconds?
I feel similarly to Kira. I'm not very good at charades. I do think I could mime out the jet lag players in 60 seconds, if only to you guys.
Right. Well, I feel like so much of charades is based on not what you are physically able to mime, but the common language you have with your friends. Like, I think I'm actually quite good at charades, but it's often not a direct representation of the object. It's something that will lead my friend to remember, oh, we talked about this thing in this way.
Yes, exactly. I feel like that's why my sister and I are really good at taboo together.
Right. All right, well, let's jump into the recap. We're back, baby. It's tag in the original map, starting in Charleville-Mézières, France, with 3 teams each running to a different end location. Sam and Toby are the first team of runners, heading towards Jersey, UK, and are being chased by 2 teams, Adam and Michelle, and Ben and Brian. Sam and Toby get off to a frantic start, booking it to the train station just in time to make the 6:08 train to Champagne-Ardenne. Meanwhile, we get our first glimpse of the 2-team chaser dynamics as the teams decide to work together, for now. The chasers struggle to book their first trains of the game, with an evil website malfunction, fully booked trains, and delays. But eventually they all end up on a train to Paris, which works quite well for Sam and Toby, who are also facing booking troubles, and so decide to avoid the Paris bottleneck by going on a low-speed line up north to Lyon. This move ends up being even more advantageous than they first expected, with both chaser teams baffled by their decision and unable to reach them for hours. In that time, Sam and Toby knock out a few challenges. Toby plays charades and perfectly imitates each of the 4 chasers, featuring a pastry mile impression for Adam, a height adjustment for Ben, and some charades for Michelle and Brian, really stretching that pun as far as I can go. In a return of the French chef, Sam makes mayonnaise despite ostensibly not knowing what a yolk is, and tries, once again, to #bring back choo choo choo. They find almonds imported from California for a distance-based coin earn, and then, once they're at the train station for their next leg, they decide to pull one last card with the double-up power-up. Except, it's a curse, granting them 3,000 coins immediately, but requiring that they travel 25 miles further from their end destination than where they drew the card. This card pull dictates the rest of the episode. Sam and Toby decide to stay put in Lyon either until they're tagged or until a much later train in the correct direction, completely baffling the chasers. The tentative alliance between the chaser teams starts to strain, as Ben and Brian want to stay in Paris and Adam and Michelle are convinced one team should go north. Since Sam and Toby can't draw any more challenges until their curse is cleared, they decide to sightsee around Lyon. They leisurely climb a hill, squeeze through a crevice, and check out JC, Mary, and some gargoyles on a cathedral. Although, as Sam questions, most of the stone statues on the exterior of the cathedral are not actually gargoyles, which require a water spout to drain water away from the building. So what they're actually looking at are called grotesques, which is the pedantic sort of thing that no one really cares about except me.
I'm so glad that you said this, because it was going to be my thorn before I saw it in your recap.
Yes! Okay, so no one cares except for me and Jaya. Ben plays hardball with Adam and Michelle, essentially stalemating the chasers as he and Brian downright refuse to leave Paris, which forces Adam and Michelle to be the ones to board the train up north to Amiens, which they disembark after getting cold feet on the plan. After a brief interlude for Brian to make a daisy chain, both teams eventually end up on the same train up to Lyon, and after arguing that someone should stay back in Paris, a coin flip determines Adam and Michelle as the ones remaining. But Ben and Brian's train up to Lyon is so long and so slow that Sam and Toby manage to get on their afternoon train back towards Riem. To conclude our recap, I've come up with a title to highlight the most important moment of the episode. And for me, I think so much of the dynamism from this first episode came from the chaser dynamics between Adam and Michelle and Ben and Brian that at times turned very reality TV, almost manipulative and catty. And so I am proposing the title, The Real Housewives of Charleville-Mézières.
That's
so
good.
Funny. That's spot on to how they were talking to each other.
Do you have any alternate titles?
I had one other suggestion, which was Sun Protection Summer.
Yes.
Because we got that great
Love.
sequence where Ben and Brian put on sunscreen.
Yes.
I love that, especially because I've been really good at wearing sunscreen this summer, so I'm like, yeah, that is what it is.
Look, I declared it Sun Protection Summer in May, and I think it's been a success for all of us.
I think maybe we win Sun Protection Summer.
Yes. And with that, I will pass things over to Kira.
Thanks, Casey. Welcome back to the Strat Chat, our segment where we break down the strategy and gameplay of the episode. Folks, let's say it together. This episode was perfect and crazy.
Yeah.
I already think there is going to be so much to discuss in terms of the strategy of the different teams at different stages of the game, but for today, I think we'll keep things relatively focused. We'll talk more about the runner strategy in our next segment, so for right now, I want to talk about the dynamics between the two teams of chasers. In the very beginning, I don't think there was a ton of strategy for the chasers. There was one clear best train out of Charleville to Riem, and then I also think there was one clear best train out of Riem to Paris. If one of the teams wasn't able to book a ticket, then there could have been more complications there, but I just think in the very beginning of the run, and with every indication that Sam and Toby were going to have to go through Paris at some point, it would have been a huge sacrifice for either team to choose not to go to Paris. But then we get to the stalemate in Paris, which is where I think things get a little bit more complicated. It's super interesting to think about this new dynamic where the chasers have to optimize for whether they want to be the next runners or whether they just need anyone to get the tag, even if it's not them. This is the situation we end up with in this episode, where Ben and Brian eventually go in for the kill on the low-speed line north to Lyon, while Adam and Michelle draw the short straw and stay in Paris as a safeguard, but I can see this being a theme for the chaser teams more broadly this season. What do you think of these potential chaser strategies? Do you think it's more advantageous to try to collaborate to get the tag quickly, even if it puts your team in a less optimal spot? Or do you think you should always be optimizing for your own team's ability to get the tag?
I am so torn about these chaser strategies. I think my instinct would very much be I want to collaborate with the other team because it means we're going to get the catch faster. But the fact that there's a lot of decision points where it makes a lot of sense to split up and then somebody's going to be in a better position, I would be torn. I kind of like that they ended up going for a coin flip because I think both teams had reasons that they wanted to be on the line north, even though staying in Paris was what they had wanted to do originally too.
I have to be completely honest. When we first were discussing before the first episode came out, this idea of chasers collaborating or working separately, I don't think I fully understood what that meant. I think in my head I had this idea that if the chasers decided to collaborate, it would mean that they were together for that whole journey. I think that I just had in my head previous seasons of Tag where we do have just one path for the chasers, which in my experience as a viewer seems to be the most optimal, except for when the runners are doing something completely unpredictable or rat mode. But here in this episode, it became immediately clear to me that there was this really advantageous strategy of having two chaser teams collaborating, but taking different routes, trying to cut off the runner in one way or the other, or having one stay in Paris in case they came down that way versus the other team going for a bit more of an active approach or tag. That being said, I think that this also raises a lot of questions about what Kira said, whether you want your team to be the one actively moving in for the tag or if you're kind of sacrificing that level of initiative in order to work with the other team. I was surprised by how many moments in the episode really showed some of those personal politics, and almost, I know I said this earlier as kind of a Real Housewives moment, but like, I feel like we see this in a lot of other kinds of reality TV shows where you are making an alliance with another teammate or another pair, but you also know that you're ultimately going to break that alliance and go for yourself.
Like only one of you can win, but for now, it's advantageous to be working together.
My interpretation of this episode is it seemed like Adam and Michelle's team was more concerned with getting a tag at all. And that also was reflected by the fact that they tended to be the ones with the maybe less advantageous move. Versus Ben and Brian seemed very adamant that they were going to do what they thought was the best move, whether or not the other team agreed to do it, forcing their hand. I think that we see at the end of this episode, though, that Adam and Michelle being in Paris actually gives them a bit more flexibility in terms of their next moves. So I feel like it's not so cut and dry moment to moment because this is such a dynamic game, because the runners are being somewhat unpredictable. But I do think that the strategy of this episode, I think Ben and Brian came out on top because they seemed to be more in control of the chaser dynamics.
I think there's really something to be said about situations where there are two clear routes. And this, I think, has been a pattern in other games of tag as well, even just the two-team ones, where one route is more flexible, you're at a hub.
Yes.
But the other route is riskier, but also higher reward. And I think what we were seeing here is that neither team wants to be risky if they don't have to be. And so if they can be the ones that feel like they're playing it safe, whether that's staying in Paris when somebody else goes up to Amiens, or going up to Leon when Sobi have been in Leon for hours and hours and hours, when Paris feels like now that's sort of staking something out, but it's not the go-getter move anymore. That's a balance that they seemed like they were trying to strike, but neither team really identified what it was that they wanted and what it was that their instinct was to go to. And I think especially Adam and Michelle got really bogged down in the indecision of there's one route that's safe, and there's one route that's risky, and the risky one would get us more likely to get a tag now, but the safe one protects us when the runners inevitably do something unpredictable.
Another dynamic that I think is really confusing for me in the beginning of this new style of game is the fact that for tag, the only moments that really matter are the moment that a team reaches their end location or what happens at the very end of the game. So it's really hard to tell who's in the lead for the whole beginning and middle of the game. And so I guess another thing that I would love to get your thoughts on is one reason why it might be advantageous to sacrifice your own ability to get the tag just in order for someone to get the tag might be because you want to prevent the current runner from getting a lot of coins. You might just say, we want to move the game along, we want people to have low balances, we want people to be frazzled all the time, so that by the time we get to the end, we're still close to the center and it's still anybody's game. But on the other hand, because this is no longer formally round robin, there's no guarantee that anyone will get any number of runs. And so for all we know, there could be a team who gets 0 runs. And so on that note, maybe different from other games of tag where the beginning of the game really is more up for grabs and it has less contribution on the rest of the game, in this version of the game, it might be that every run has to be a YOLO run, both for the chasers and for the runners, because if you don't make the tag, you might never run. And so I guess that's another dynamic that I'm curious about, where do you think that the chaser strategy needs to be YOLO, like maybe what Ben and Brian are doing, where they have to optimize for getting the catch? Or do you think it is strategic to say, well, the beginning of the game is different from the end of the game. It is fine if we are not the runner as long as someone is preventing this current run from being really long.
I'm almost reminded of Snake a little bit, and the moment where Adam and Ben think they know where Sam is going and they concoct this whole plan and they go for it and Sam does something completely different.
Yeah.
I think here, one real benefit of collaborating with the other chaser team is that with two teams instead of one, you're minimizing the risk of a move like trying to anticipate where they're going to go next or trying to string together a bunch of tight connections, which might not be as realistic if there's just one chaser team because the risk is outweighed by the possibility that the runner will really go a far way. But I'm thinking about here, a lot of the strategy was one team staying put, thinking there's a chance that they'll come through here and we could tag them if we see them coming towards us. That being said, I definitely think that that was impacted by the fact that this is the first day, the first run, and I could really see towards the third day, the end of the game, if it feels like it's the last run, I can see the teams of chasers really collaborating, thinking it doesn't matter who gets the next run, we just need to stop it, and maybe taking some larger swings with one of the teams, and the other team kind of playing more of the safe route.
There also might be something about, and this kind of brings it back to the reality TV of it all, something about forming good relationships with the other teams at the beginning of the game.
Yes.
What if you do collaborate for a whole run?
Yes.
What decides which team actually makes the catch if both teams of chasers are actively there?
Yes.
If you guys have been working together the whole time, you might owe each other favors.
Yes.
Like, I think Ben and Brian might be shooting themselves in the foot a little bit by immediately trying to just YOLO it, because now Adam and Michelle just aren't going to trust them for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
And so anytime they're going after Sam and Toby, they're not going to think the best of each other. Like, they're not going to believe that Ben and Brian will follow through on something that they say that they're going to do.
Right. What I will say is, as we're discussing all of this, I do think that the situation in this episode was quite unique in that the runners were mostly not moving and they were in one place. And so much of this was in the chasers' heads of, do we go for them? It's a stalemate. Are they going to go this way? Are they going to go that way? Are they going to stay there? Should we actively chase the tag where they are? Should we try to be planning for where they're going? I honestly think that the strategy will completely change when we really see the runner more actively going for their end location, especially because, as they have discussed and as we've discussed, so much of the strategy of a chaser in tag is to get in front of the runner or to get as close behind as possible. And so much of the strategy of the runner is to not let that happen. For a more active runner team who's really going for it and not really stopping much at all, I almost feel like it might make more sense for the chasers to be working completely separately and to just be trying to get in front of the other team, as opposed to, I think here it did make sense to collaborate to try to cover the various kind of exit options for the runners.
I also keep really thinking about what would they have done if it was a normal game of tag, if it was a regular season. Would they have staked it out in Paris? Would they have felt just as antsy staking out Paris as they did this time?
That's a great
or
point.
would they have gone after them in Leon? Because I kind of see them going up towards Leon earlier in a regular game of tag, where I feel like they're more paranoid in a regular game of tag and they're more willing to just be following behind the runner for some extended period of time, versus here both teams know if we're following the runner, then the other team doesn't have to be, so the other team's gonna get the tag. And so I honestly think this run would have ended in a far less dire and coin heavy situation in a regular season.
Now that there are two teams of chasers, there's an incentive to not be the loser, to not be the sucker. Whereas before, it's like, well, at least we're in it together. Like, we're going to go one way and then we're going to try to get the tag. But now there's an idea that the other team could be better. And so it makes more sense to put yourself in a strategic position and wait there because it looks bad and it feels bad to be the sucker. This has all been so interesting to delve into. I think I will pass things over to Casey for us to talk a little bit more about the runner's strategy.
Thanks, Kira. Welcome back to the Detour, a segment where we propose alternate paths that the teams could have taken, detours if you will, and discuss our thoughts on what might have happened. I think this episode leaves me with one obvious detour to explore. What if Sam and Toby hadn't waited so long in Leon? But I think this could have happened for a few different reasons, and I want to dig deeper into them. The first possibility is that Sam and Toby could have vetoed the curse. As we saw in the episode, they had plenty of time before either of the chasers started heading their way, so they could have waited out the double-length hour-long veto period and then continued to pull challenges. However, then they would have wasted their once-a-run power-up, probably made fewer coins, and been in a somewhat similar situation to what they ended up deciding between in the episode. I also think that they didn't know that it would take so long for the chasers to come after them, and that was definitely a factor in their decision-making. I'm more interested in what would have happened if they decided to continue their run without clearing the curse. We know that with curses, the runners earn those coins upon the card draw, so they were dealing with an immediate balance of 6,000 coins. Do you think it would have made sense for them to commit to their run and try to make it to Jersey with this coin balance, knowing they couldn't earn any more coins until their curse was cleared? What could they have done?
I honestly love the option of just trying to not do any more challenges for the remainder of their run. I think it feels so unlikely for me that they would do that. I feel like it's pretty rare that that's an option that's also feasible with a curse.
Yes.
Oof, I just love that it is happening. I think it could have been worth trying to continue their run, because the train from Leon to Paris would have been a low speed. It wouldn't have been super expensive. It's like 1.5, 2 hours on a low speed train. So it wouldn't have been super expensive. And so they could have just taken whatever the next train to Paris was, assuming that once they get to Paris, they're either able to high speed YOLO it out of there or get caught and have their balance for their next run. And because they were banking on getting caught in Leon, they seem to be pretty confident that they're going to be able to get another run. They seem confident that they'll make a catch. And so that could have just happened a little faster in Paris.
Yeah, that's honestly a great point about how once you get to Paris, if you can get on a high speed out of there, then you've made it presumably ahead of the chasers. I'm curious how far 6,000 coins can actually get you, because I do think that's got to be either the highest or one of the highest balances we've ever seen at one time in tag. The tricky part, I think, is that once they committed to YOLOing, they needed to commit to making 0 more coins. Because with the curse, they needed to get 25 miles further away from the point where they drew the card. So they couldn't, for instance, make it to Paris and then go 25 miles backwards from there. So I think something that gets tricky is if they make it most of the way to Jersey, they're ahead of the chasers, they're in a really good spot, and then they run out of coins, or then they make it to a spot where their only options are high-speed train and they only have enough budget for low speed. And so I think that gets scary. But also, they had a ton of time in Leon. I wonder whether it would have been worth it to start looking at, well, how long would it take on high-speed trains to get pretty close to Jersey? What actually is the lowest budget we could make it there on?
Yeah. Like, how much flex do we want in our budget to make it to Jersey?
Right.
If it would take them 5,000 coins, their 6,000 balance would have probably felt pretty good. But if it's going to take, 6,000 or maybe 7,000 coins, then they're going to know, okay, we need to clear this challenge. Or, we need to clear this curse.
Because I do actually think, especially with tag, and I feel like I'm going to say this all the time, but I just feel it so strongly, where it doesn't matter until the end. And so I think with a YOLO run, I am not convinced that a YOLO run ever makes sense until the end, unless you think you can make it to your actual end location. Because otherwise, I guess you're still putting yourself further into your win zone, and so it's possible that the next runner would get caught still in your win zone, and if you catch them, then you're starting in your win zone already. And so there are complications. I just think it's so risky to waste a lot of coins on day one, knowing that if you don't make it to your end location, it doesn't, that doesn't matter.
I feel very torn on this because I think you're both bringing up a lot of good points. I just especially with this new not round robin season.
Yeah.
I think that it is really tough to leave anything for a second run.
Yeah.
To be clear, I don't entirely think that's what they were doing here. I think they thought it was much more likely that they would get tagged before they could get on this train that would take them towards the opposite direction of their end location to clear the curse. Mm-hmm. It so happened that they were able to take that train. We don't know what happens next, but I think at that point, they're probably thinking, maybe this isn't the end. We're not going to get tagged immediately. Maybe we do clear this curse. We're able to do more challenges. We're able to keep going. I don't think they're necessarily waiting for a second run, but at the same time, with such a high balance, I think that there is this expectation that that would really come in handy towards the end of the game, towards the end of the 3 days, on another run. And that just makes me very nervous. I also think it is kind of hard to see them spend coins to move in the opposite direction. I just think that is like, that's why this curse is so good and so bad.
Both in the opposite direction and to physically put the chasers in front of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like where they are in Leon, the chasers aren't in front of them necessarily, but where they kind of have to go to get farther from Jersey, the chasers become in front of them once they head south.
They could have gone for a run, but optimally you'd have to go through Paris. And at that point, they're assuming the chasers are somewhere near Paris and they could get caught there. 6,000 coins is a lot, and I think it would allow them to be able to pretty much move without needing to stop for challenges. And if they didn't clear the curse, obviously they couldn't pull more challenges. But that doesn't mean that they're constantly moving. There might be a train delay, or there might be a connection that's longer than they really would like, and there's still chances for the chasers to tag them, and then they've wasted more of that coin balance. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I'm like, to be so honest, I just don't know what I would do in this situation. I felt very torn watching the episode, and even now talking about it, I still don't feel strongly one way or the other. But I do have one last consideration. I don't even know if it's possible in the rules or physically, but do you think that they could have cleared the curse earlier by some other form of transportation or some other strategy here?
Walk.
Leon seemed big enough to have buses.
That's what I thought.
You could go 25 miles on a bus, but a lot of bus lines are going to be a bit more local than that. It might have been hard to get the full 25 miles, but potentially they could have gotten somewhere even with an earlier low-speed train to somewhere else.
The whole time I was like, you gotta be moving. Like, yeah. I enjoyed their travel vlog moment, to be sure.
But a travel vlog moment in Run 1, Episode 1 of Tag stresses me out.
And it's entirely possible that they looked into that and it's just not included in the episode.
Yeah.
But they waited for so long. And I think that they were expecting the chasers to come tag them earlier. Mm-hmm. But that was so much time where they weren't earning additional coins because they hadn't cleared the curse and they weren't moving forward. And I just wonder if there was maybe an opportunity to take a bike or a bus to another train station that could have gotten them to clear that curse earlier. I don't know.
That's barely less than a marathon. You can run a marathon in under 4 hours.
Well,
maybe Sam can, but I don't.
Toby, I would fear for her life.
Toby on his back.
I believe Toby could do anything. I just wouldn't want her to suffer like that. Well, I'm sure we'll hear more about what Sam and Toby do next in the next episode, and I'm sure we will have way more to discuss. But with that, I will pass things over to Jaya.
Thanks, Casey. Welcome back to Tag, and welcome to the Train of Lies.
Choo-choo!
Today's Train of Lies, because we are coming back to Tag, and now we're doing special fancy lots of people Tag, is about world record games of Tag.
Ooh.
But I first wanted to start us off with a mini round, of course. True or false speed run of fun facts I found on the Wikipedia page for Tag.
Oh, yes.
Great.
First, Duck Duck Goose is listed as a Tag variation.
True.
I don't think it should be, so I will say false.
It is true, but Casey, I agree. I don't think it should be.
It definitely shouldn't be.
It feels true in a pedantic way.
Second, one of the variations of tag, called poison, is played by a group of people holding hands around a small chalk circle on the ground. The first player to be pushed or pulled into the circle becomes poisoned, and then is functionally it in a game of Spread the Disease.
No way!
Oh, I want this to be true.
I'm gonna say false because I want to invent it.
Casey, you were right. This is true.
That was true!
This is true.
Oh my god, wait.
That's thrilling.
I love that. That must have come to my childhood psyche in a dream or something.
It was poison from, like, the 1909 Book of Children's Games.
That's also so cultish to be like, these children are going to stand in a circle and yoink each other.
So many I think tag is
Honestly,
kind
though,
of cultish.
that sounds fun as hell.
It does.
Like, poison sounds fun. Third, the South Asian game Kabaddi includes a team of raiders crossing a dividing line to tag defenders and then making it back over the line without being tackled. It's included in the official Asian Games and has a world championship, and it was actually played in the Olympics between 1928 and 1940.
Whoa.
There are too many specifics here. I think most of that is true and something is false, so I'm going to say false.
Well, the game itself sounds true because it almost reminds me of, like, Red Rover.
Yeah.
I just don't have faith in the world that they would have that in the Olympics.
I would believe that there were, like, world championships for it, but the idea that it would make it to formally the Olympics, like, there are sports, I don't know, that feels something is fishy here.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna say false.
You guys fully read me like a book. It was demonstrated in the 1936 Berlin Olympics, but it was never officially played. Finally, in our speedrun, baseball is listed in the tag Wikipedia page.
Now, this is very interesting.
This is like, is a hot dog a sandwich?
It kind of, I don't think it's listed in Wikipedia, but, like, it's not wrong.
I think that I feel like Wikipedia articles will sometimes be very broad in what they tag or what they mention. Like, they might say, although not a form of tag, baseball includes aspects of tag, you know? So I want to say this is true.
I'm going to say false.
Casey, you exactly figured it out.
Yay!
It's listed under games involving tagging as a component of gameplay.
Literally.
Yeah.
Rolls
Like,
off the
tagging
tongue.
is a part of this game, but it's not a game of tag.
That's so funny.
That is so interesting.
All right, with our speedrun out of the way, let's go to our big round. Our big round, of course, as I said, is about world record games of tag. First, the game of tag played with the most people ever took place in Osaka, Japan in 2019. It was hosted by a group of YouTubers who make a lot of videos about Japanese parks and adventure playgrounds, and they focus on tag. It felt very jet lag coded to me. Their game didn't work like a regular game of tag, though, because there were so many people. 5 of the YouTubers on this channel were chasing down and tagging as many of the participants they could in 30 minutes. To monitor the game, about 250 inspectors were placed around the park from the Guinness Book of World Records, and a whopping 10,908 people participated, blowing the previous record of about 2,200 people out of the water. Second, the most remote game of tag was played on the moon. During the Apollo 16 mission, the second-to-last US moon landing during the Cold War, 2 of the 3 astronauts on board, John Young and Charles Duke, spent a 3-day stay on the moon's surface from April 21st to 24th, 1972, while the third person on this mission, Ken Mattingly, piloted the command module. On the day of their second moonwalk, the 2 astronauts headed to Stone Mountain, climbing to the Cinco Craters. Upon departing the LRV, the little car, at Cinco Craters, Young is recorded to have gently bumped into Duke, as you do on the moon, declared, "Tag, Duke, you're it," and then scampered off to go collect rocks.
Oh my gosh.
Finally, the game of tag played over the largest area was played by a group of friends from the University of Chicago. It seems they really have nothing better to do in these long Midwest winters than come up with extended games for a lot of people. So this group started playing an extended game of tag, and it sort of seemed to have functioned like Assassin, but it counted for the Guinness Book of World Records. Because when they got sent home for COVID and then graduated, they just kept playing. Despite living in different countries, every time someone visited each other, it seemed like the tag would move on. Just last year, this game ended, when one of the friends got married in South Africa and they reunited, finally able to play tag at high speed once more. Which one of those is true? 2 of them are lies.
This is very
2 of them are lies?
2 of them are lies.
They all sound so real.
Yippee!
I think that the last one is a lie because it sounds like... Well, first of all, it sounds true because I feel like people at UChicago would do that. It's very scav-coded. But also, it sounds really like the inspiration for the tag movie, which is older than that. Like, that's not a COVID thing. The tag movie, I think that may have also been a global game of tag. So I feel like the third one is a lie that's based in lots of true elements.
I'm very intrigued by the moon one.
I want that one to be true.
Because I feel like that is the sort of thing that would happen and then would kind of balloon out as a kind of like folklore tale. Like, I feel like
this is the moon landing that played tag.
But at the same time, it also feels like something that could maybe be more like urban legend, and maybe the details have kind of shifted over time and there's something that you're throwing in there to trick us. That being said, I'm also intrigued by this largest game of tag in Osaka. And I am just putting this out there. It's possible that that's mostly true, but it wasn't tag. It was a different game. I think that it's possible that it was tag and there were that many people there, but it wasn't a Guinness record because they didn't have examiners there. And it was just like a social media thing that kind of, they expected to be much smaller than it was, and then all of a sudden it was big. So I feel like, but at the same time, I really think that it sounds like something very plausible to me. I feel like I've convinced myself from thinking they were all true to thinking that none of them are true.
This is so hard.
But I think I'm gonna go with the biggest game of tag in Osaka being true.
I'm gonna go with the moon, mostly out of wishful thinking and also because of the silliness of the other things I've seen from moon landings.
Casey, you are correct.
Yay!
You really got me in this train of lies. The other 2 I 100% made up. None of it is true.
They were so plausible,
You
Jaya.
did such a good job.
That was really, really
Thank you. Congratulations, Casey. You are the winner of the train of lies.
Yippee!
And I will pass it back to you.
Thanks, Jaya. We are now moving into our first Rosebud Thorn of the season. So, Kira, what was your Rosebud and Thorn for this episode?
My rose, I have a humongous rose for the episode as a whole. I thought everything was so fun and vibey all at the beginning. And specifically, I think charades might be my new favorite challenge. I thought Toby did it absolutely perfectly. I thought it was so funny. And just as the first challenge of the season, it brought me so much joy. I thought it was so fun. My silly thorn is that my throat hurts from screaming my head off at the screen. I could not keep my mouth shut. I was having a great time. But also, I'm already stressed that because the game is only 3 days long, I'm worried that one of the teams is straight up never going to get a run, either because the runs are going to be so long or because there's going to be tag backs, and I didn't think that would even be a possibility. But after this first episode, I'm starting to get nervous. And my bud is I'm so curious what's going to happen with Sam and Toby's budget. Will they even get a chance to use their enormous coin balance? Are they going to try to do a huge run as soon as they clear the curse? Or are they going to try to test their luck and see whether they'll get a second run? I'm so excited.
Jaya, what about you?
My rose is that our bingo cards got whammied so hard by the quick succession of specifically a Pastry Mile reference, and then a Tag 2 flashback, and then a Choo 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 mention. It had me screaming my head off. My thorn is a silly one, but Ben and Brian, are playing exactly how the vibes say that they would be playing. And oh my god, they're driving me crazy. If I was playing with these fucking guys, I would be losing my mind. Like, every reaction that Adam had to Ben saying things, Adam got me. I was so glad somebody had me like that, because I think Ben knows exactly how to piss Adam off, but also it was pissing me off. And my Bud, also a little bit of a joke, Bud. I'm so glad Sam finally learned what a yoke was, and I hope this information enriches his life enormously in the future.
My jaw dropped. I was like, this cannot be real.
Spoken like
I
a
had
man
to
who
rewind. It made
microwaves
me
his
laugh
rice.
too hard.
My rose was that I thought this episode was so much fun. The challenges were very entertaining. The chaser strategy I thought was very fresh and new for this game. And I really enjoyed Sam and Toby's little travel vlog moment. So even if there wasn't a ton of movement by the teams, I think so much happened, and it was a really strong opening to the season. My thorn kind of related to what Jaya just said. Poor Toby suffering with that improvised mayonnaise. I think the evil challenges are very fun to watch, but it's tough to have to subject lovely Toby to them. My bud is that I'm just so excited to see how the chaser dynamics continue to evolve across the season. I think in this episode, Ben really manipulated the situation to his team's advantage. So will this mean that Adam and Michelle will work more independently in the next episode? I could also really see one chaser team being stranded super far away when the tag happens, which is exciting and very nerve-wracking. And with that, thank you for waiting at Baggage Claim. Let us know your thoughts on socials at baggageclaimpod or over email, which is in the episode description. If you're enjoying the show, please leave a comment or give us a follow. We'll see you next week at the Charades Baggage Claim. The Luggage Carousel is a troop of minds. Goodbye.
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 I have read a lot of articles about defunct Olympic sports, and I was like, this sounds familiar, but I know that sometimes they include sports not in the official Olympics, but in demonstrations, including, of course, horse diving, which is a sport that I care deeply about thanks to a made-for-TV movie we watched as children called Wild Hearts Can't Be Broken, based on a true story
horse diving
about a woman who is a horse diver, where a horse runs and then a person jumps onto the horse and then they both jump off of a diving board. But in this movie and in real life, this woman, the dive went wrong and she went blind. And then she continued to horse dive for 11 more years.
Because she had such a strong bond with the horse that they trusted each other.
Wow.
I'm concerned about these new artistic sports because I don't understand the grading system.
Just because
What do you mean? Ray Gun should have won?
I was like, just because you didn't understand Ray Gun doesn't mean that they don't deserve a place in the Olympics.
I don't get it. I have some concerns for the grading system because it has not been explained to Kira me.
That rules.
So I think to fix that, you turn the volume on
Okay.
the Olympics.
Okay.